Welcome.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome to the Level Up with Rachel podcast. And thank you again for coming in person, official second guest.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here. So to get started, share with everyone, your name, what you're about, like what is your life purpose in this season of life?
Okay, so
right into it.
My name is Tamara Milne. I live here in Christchurch with my longtime fiance Brian. We've been together 10 years, and our three beautiful boys, Fergus, Zach, and Finn. Very wild, chaotic, full household, but we're so lucky and grateful. And I guess the last few years have just been a huge evolution of self and figuring out my purpose. And really standing strong in that. So it's been a beautiful learning. Yeah.
And so we'll just dive right into the first question. What does self-love mean to you, and how did you come about, to start your self-love journey? Like, where do you feel like that really started for you?
I think there's probably two key pieces to this. And I think the first one, which so many women can relate to, is pre-motherhood and post-motherhood, and that huge just evolution of yourself, and you're completely unraveled and I guess thrown into this new world of trying to figure out who you are as a person, separate to being a mum. And I guess I was sort of starting to dibble my toes into that after we had our first son. And then the huge catalyst for change and growth for me was just after we had our second son. Kind of during the end of my pregnancy with little Zach, was during 2020, lockdown. Which we both just discovered today. Yeah.
That our kids were born on the same day.
Exact same day, 7th of May.
So wild.
Crazy. One of my favourite numbers, 7. And my oldest son actually was born on the 7th of the month as well. Random story about that, actually. They were both due on the 4th of the month. So my oldest was due on the 4th of September and Zach was due on the 4th of May, and they both came on the 7th.
Amazing.
So they're both exactly 3 days over. Towards the end of my pregnancy with Zach, middle of lockdown, I guess trying to navigate entertaining a 20-month-old toddler at home and keep him quiet while Dad worked upstairs. Body kind of growing and changing in pregnancy, and I felt a lump in my breast, and so incredibly fortunate for my, I guess, previous knowledge and experience in my work world, working as a radiographer, that it was ingrained in me how important it was to check, and it's something I had done so regularly that the second I felt the lump, I knew it was wrong and abnormal and something that I needed to check.
So how often do you, in this season of your life, were you checking? I'm curious.
Prior?
No, like in this season of life when you found the lump?
So I had always been pretty regular. Like every week I would check in the shower.
So the lump appeared from one week
but
to another?
No, in this season, interesting.
Okay.
I guess in the thick of parenting a toddler, pregnant with number 2, we were actually having a conversation, Ryan and I was naked, about to hop in the shower with the toddler, and we were laughing about how my breasts were getting so big. I was 37 weeks pregnant towards the end of my pregnancy, and things were growing and shifting, ready to make milk. And I thought, when was the last time I checked? And it's not often that I ever got to that point, because it just was such a routine habit for me. But yeah, I thought, oh no, I feel like it's been a while, so I checked in the shower. And I honestly, that was such a wild time in the thick of lockdown, and
it was a wild year for a lot of us.
It was just so much of that is such a blur that I couldn't remember the last time I had. I couldn't remember if it was a few weeks before, if it was a couple of months before.
But what's interesting about your story, and what I want to paint the picture of, because you said of your background, you are how you were saying it's ingrained in you to check. This is what I find so fascinating about your story. You before meeting you, I was not checking myself regularly. I didn't understand the importance of it, but you do.
Yes.
And hopefully after this episode, a lot of other women will too.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope.
And so what I want to paint the picture of is like, when you say regularly, you genuinely mean you checked yourself every week normally.
Yeah.
In
I
normal
worked
times.
multiple times throughout my menstrual cycle.
Which is amazing. Like,
yeah.
definitely I was not doing that. I didn't understand the importance. So I want to paint the picture to people that you were a regular checker. So
yes,
continue on with this
and
scene.
I guess, and that I think is so crucial to understand and really highlight the fact that then the second I felt this lump, I just knew instinctively that it was abnormal because I had checked so regularly over the years throughout my menstrual cycle, throughout, you know, my first pregnancy and my first breastfeeding experience with Fergus. And I guess, you know, towards the beginning of my second pregnancy, you know, I knew what my normal hormonal lumps and bumps and changes felt like.
See, I wouldn't even know that.
I think this is such a key thing that I try and teach and spread, is that we're all different, right? We all have normal things that change within our breasts and our bodies with relation to our menstrual cycle, right? And what's normal for you might not be normal for me, and vice versa. So I think the key thing is, if we know our own normal, then things that are abnormal really jump out to us. You know, it would be like if we constantly look in the mirror, right? We're putting makeup on every day. And if we suddenly grew like a black mole in the middle of our cheek, it would jump out at us because it's something we do and look at every single day. So that abnormality would really be obvious to us. And in the same sense, it goes with our breasts, that if we check them regularly throughout our normal changes, we know if something's not right. You know, if something appears and disappears, then it's likely that that is a hormonal change associated with our menstrual cycle. You know, but any abnormality that kind of sticks around and seems alarming to you, we should absolutely be checking. And I can't stress that enough, that just instinctively when I felt the lump, I knew in my gut that it was abnormal. And I think probably deep down, I knew that it was not going to be a good outcome. Yeah. So the following week, this was during the Easter long weekend of lockdown, and you know, so I had a few days of just it weighing on the back of my mind. And then we got to the Tuesday, and I actually had a midwife appointment that day. So it was 37 weeks. And during lockdown, obviously, you would know, it was all up in the air. And so she would often come and park up my driveway. We'd have a phone consultation. We'd chat over the phone for the, you know, majority of the appointment. And then she'd pop inside quickly with her mask and gloves and gown and you know, check my obs and listen to baby's heartbeat and all of that sort of thing. So over that phone call, I said to her, hey, look, found a lump on my breast over the weekend, feeling uneasy about it, and I definitely want it checked. Is that something that you can help me organise, or do I just need to see the GP? Absolutely, she said, no, see your GP. So I rang them then and there, and I managed to really push to have an appointment with them that afternoon. And again, something that I really like to highlight is that knowing my normal, I knew instinctively something wasn't right. And I had to really push with the doctor to get a referral for an ultrasound. You know, she felt the lump and she said, look, it feels mobile and circular. I don't think it's anything to worry about. It feels like a cyst. Go away and have your baby, and if you're worried in a few months, come back and see us. And just through, you know, my experience within radiology and having encountered so many women in varying stages of breast cancer over the years, I just know the difference that a few months can make to somebody's outcome. And I just, in my gut, that didn't sit right.
And also just your knowing, you know, your intuition of just knowing.
Just trusting that.
And I'm so over these people trying to diminish women's power of intuition, of knowing their body, that something is wrong.
Absolutely. And it's frustrating, and I don't discredit any GPs. I think they have such a difficult role of having to know all facets of health. But that's where it's so important that we are empowered in our own health. And when we go and seek advice, if something doesn't sit right, or their advice doesn't really appease that uneasiness, is ask again, or push for tests, imaging, whatever it may be, to help get the right answers for you, or seek a second opinion. I think that's so, so important. But that's exactly it, is I really trusted my intuition and my deep knowing that it just wasn't right, and I wanted clarity. I wanted to know I didn't have to worry about it, and that I could go and have my baby, and that huge influx of hormones was not going to affect anything, and that I would still be able to breastfeed him, because I really enjoyed my breastfeeding journey with our first son, and I really desperately wanted that again, if it was possible. So I really wanted clarity and had to push. And she finally, after, asking 2 or 3 times, she sent me off with a referral for an ultrasound.
Now, when you say you had to ask 2 or 3 times, was this while you were in office? Was this over the phone? Okay.
No, and that's the thing.
So basically, you were not leaving until you had an ultrasound.
Think, thinking back, I remember in the car thinking to myself as I was going to the doctor, I'm not going to leave without an ultrasound referral. And I think that is it. That is that like deep inner knowing that I just knew it wasn't right. And so instinctively, I knew I need to know for sure. And I think that's one is so important, is like slowing down enough to listen to our intuition and our gut instincts, but also knowing you're normal in all facets of health, so that you can confidently, when you seek advice, say, this isn't normal for me. This isn't my normal. And I think being able to trust that means that when they give you advice that doesn't really sit right, you can confidently say, no, I don't agree with that, or that doesn't feel right to me, or I want clarity.
Yes.
Yes.
And a lot of this too is having the confidence to speak up and use your voice. And I think that's where, self-love is important, because when you have the depth of self-love to love yourself enough to know that it's safe to use your voice.
Yes.
That it's safe to speak up for yourself, regardless of how the person outside of you is going to respond. Like, you have to speak your truth.
Yeah, exactly.
So I love that you did that, that you pushed back, and hopefully that experience changed that doctor too, like that doctor's perspective. Who knows? But we can only hope. We can only hope. So let's continue on with the story, because it's so good.
Well, yes. So then,
it's awful that it happened, but it's good in a weird way too, as all these stories are. Yeah.
So at the end of that week, I had an ultrasound, and they said it's not a cyst, it's definitely a solid lesion. But again, I knew with that came multiple variables, some good, some not so good. And they said, in order to know for sure, we need to biopsy it. So I had a biopsy then and there. And the following week, I went in to see a breast surgeon, and she told me, I'm sorry, you have breast cancer. And just something I'm so grateful for was the knowledge and experience I had that had really instilled in me the importance of self-checking, because I know that I caught it early. And look, I could have caught it earlier if I had checked in, the weeks leading up, who knows. But, and then part of me thinks perhaps this lump became more obvious and closer to the surface as my breasts were kind of growing and changing, because it's likely that that little tumour had been there growing for quite some time.
And it pushed it.
Perhaps it was sitting closer to the surface. It made it easier to feel. And
so what type of breast cancer was it?
So I had stage 1, grade 3 invasive ductal carcinoma in situ, so quite a mouthful. And there are so many variances when it comes to breast cancer, and whether or not they're hormone driven, the grade, the staging is sort of determined by whether or not the cancer has spread, and so I was incredibly lucky that it hadn't spread into my lymph nodes and moved around my body. And I just know that gave me a really good chance of getting through treatment and coming out the other side. And I think, once the cancer's had the ability to move around our body and metastasize and spread, it makes it so much harder to treat. And, our response to treatment is so much more hindered. And I think I sort of held my breath for a couple of weeks there. The day that I had the results and they told me it was breast cancer, they then went on and biopsied some lymph nodes in my armpit. And, they were a little bit larger in size, which they can in pregnancy. Our lymphatic system does a beautiful job of, sweeping up all the toxins and helping to clean up our system. So, often in pregnancy, or if we're fighting off a virus, they are a little bit enlarged, and that's normal. But they sort of found the largest nodes they could within my armpit area and biopsied them. And I think that week I just was, absolutely just holding my breath, because I knew the outcome of that would drastically change the next year for me, and how grueling treatment was, and basically the outcome that was possible to me.
So take me back to that moment when they told you, I'm sorry you have breast cancer. What did you go through? What were the feelings, the thoughts?
Gosh, it was actually such a wild time, just to add to it. So I had the biopsy on the Friday, and the Saturday morning, lockdown, I rang my mum and I said, I found a lump on my breast, and I actually had it biopsied yesterday. And probably mother's intuition, she probably had it in the back of her gut that, this doesn't sound good. And I had said to her that I was having the results on the Wednesday. And so she was sort of already on the back burner, right? She was going to break bubbles if I went into labour with our second baby, and she would come and look after Fergus. So she said, no, I will come over and I will look after Fergus, and Ryan can go with you. That's not a problem. And then that night, sadly, one of her brothers in Australia passed away. And, in amongst the thick of COVID, that was just devastating. And it meant that none of the family could be there. So, that was just a whole nother thing. But on the Wednesday, there was a memorial service for my uncle over in Australia. And then we have sort of family dotted around New Zealand. And so we had a family Zoom to dial into the memorial service in Australia, and so we could kind of collectively be together and support one another in that. And uncannily, it was at exactly the same time as my appointment.
Of course it was.
So I said to Mum, no, don't worry. So she was off doing that, and I said to Ryan, it'll be fine, just drop me off, because you had to go on your own. You weren't allowed anybody with you at these appointments during level 4 lockdown.
Right.
So he took off around the corner and sort of went for a walk to find a playground with our toddler. And when the nurse and the surgeon called me from the waiting room, she said, very casually, sorry, I know it's lockdown and we say you can't have somebody, but if you've got a support person, you're welcome to bring them through. And look, I don't know if everybody would think the same, but maybe coming from a medical background, I just thought, shit. I think I just knew in that moment that what she was about to tell me wasn't going to be good news. And then when she said it, I sort of got overwhelmed and upset, and I started crying, and I said, sorry, I'm just really tired and hormonal. And her and the nurse said, you're allowed to, this is shocking news, you're allowed to be upset, but I think I just, you do just go into this kind of state of shock, and I think I just felt a bit embarrassed that I was emotional, and, you try and blame it on, it's the hormones, it's the pregnancy. And then it's just, you can't really describe it. Like, that next couple of weeks was a living nightmare. I think, being told you have cancer
when you're about to have a baby
is, and I think I'd been working within radiology. I'd been a radiographer for maybe 15, 16 years at this point, so I'd spent the better half of nearly 2 decades within the medical field. Every single day, being exposed to people and meeting people who, in the blink of an eye, their life changes, and, catastrophic strokes and aneurysms and brain bleeds and car accidents and, traumatic events that literally change their livelihood and their physical capabilities and their health for forever. And one, I think, that has always given me this really deep sense of gratitude and understanding that life is finite and that we're not guaranteed tomorrow, and that we really do need to, be appreciative of every day that we get and really be grateful for our health and our well-being. But I think also in amongst that, you still always think, that won't ever be me.
Mm-hmm.
And then suddenly, you're thrown into it being your story, and it's, there's no other way to describe it, I think, than it just being utterly devastating. And such a ride of trying to understand and unpack and process something big like that. And then I think a really big lesson for me in those first couple of days, because I was emotional and trying to understand it all and trying to, tell my family over the phone, to make the phone calls to my sisters and my brother that I'd just been diagnosed. And I guess maybe even coming from a health background, always felt quite protective, like I wanted to downplay it. I didn't want them to worry. I didn't want them to be immediately thinking worst case scenario. And I didn't want them worrying about it. So trying to act brave, like this isn't the worst thing in the world and it's totally going to be fine. And all of the conversations that came within those few days of conversations with the midwife and conversations. Oh gosh, we had so many appointments over Zoom with the oncologist and lots of the medical team to come up with our plan and figure out what was happening over the next months. And, I had lots of emotions in front of my toddler, and he just started acting up, and it was so intense in that first day especially that I really realised how much of an influence our energy has on them. And so I had to put my phone away and just be totally present with occupying him and entertaining him and just being mum, which I so desperately just wanted to be. I wanted this to be just something separate. Yeah. I just wanted it to be separate and not leach into those parts of my life that were so important. And I think I just tried to navigate the big emotions and trying to process it on my own. And, I remember kind of standing in the shower and just sobbing and trying to get it all out and, feeling the fear, I guess, of what was about to come. And I think, you just are in this state of holding your breath until you know exactly what the plan is. And then I think when you have a plan and you understand what's ahead and the treatment that was to follow, it gives you the sense of control and, okay, right, we're in it now. And it feels more manageable. It feels less terrifying to be actively working to get rid of it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that. And for those of you that can't see her, she had tears in her eyes and then I had tears in my eyes because it took me back. And it just, it's so hard to navigate. I can only imagine something like that while having a child in the physical and then about to have another child, and just so many emotions that come with that on top of being in lockdown. There's just so many layers there. And I'm curious to know what was the top lesson or the top two things that you learned from that experience about yourself.
So many.
I'm sure there was a lot.
I think in the thick of it, I think it's been this huge process of unpacking it all and learning about myself and this new version of myself in the aftermath. But I feel like in the thick of it, it's so hard to even comprehend anything.
You just in survival.
And understand anything like that, if that makes sense. There were snippets along the way. I guess a huge kind of self-love piece was the whole hair loss experience. And, I think for any woman, the concept and the thought of losing your hair and, your eyebrows and your eyelashes is so hard to wrap your head around. And it happened quite quickly. The type of chemotherapy I had, AC was the first lot I had. I had 2 different kinds. And the first lot I had every 3 weeks for 4 cycles. And it's called the Red Devil, and it's very much very brutal. And the oncologist had said to me, day 14, you'll lose your hair. And it's so funny because I I remember I had an MRI, I think, and my sister had come along and she looked after Zach. And so I started chemotherapy when Zach was 2 weeks old. So I had this little tiny baby. So she came and she looked after him while I had the scan. And we were sitting at a cafe afterwards, and I was saying to her, it's so weird. This was like day 13. So it was the Wednesday, and I had had the chemo on the Friday. So it was almost coming up to 2 weeks. I said to her, it's so weird. The oncologist said, day 14, your hair will fall out. And I just was sitting there with my normal hair. I said to her, that's wild to think in 2 days my hair's suddenly going to fall out. And I ran my hand through my hair and I kind of like tugged. I was like, so weird. And I literally had a handful of hair. And we just looked at each other. And of course my sister started crying and I was laughing. It's just such a weird concept. It's so weird to wrap your head around that. And so it started happening like almost like clockwork. And that is just how science fascinates me. And, you know, that chemotherapy is so fine-tuned to absolutely knock your cells at a particular phase of the cell cycle that they know, you know, the rapidly growing and changing cells like your hair and your nails and your skin are very similar to, you know, particular cancer cells. And so it knocks them at that phase of the cycle. And lo and behold, the hair started coming out. So that weekend I had the family round and my best friend over, and my beautiful sister-in-law, who was a hairdresser in a former life, she brought round her razors and we shaved my head and had the whole family involved in it. And that was a really beautiful experience, I think. It was a really good way of like taking control, but also I think making it less, I think making it less overwhelming for the family, you know, I didn't want them to suddenly see me bald. So to be, I think, part of the process. And I think obviously, Zach was a baby, but Fergus he was about 21 months at this point, and perhaps too young to understand, but I think even just having him involved, and, you know, he had a wee turn with the razor, makes it, I guess, less daunting for them. To him, you know, he's just watching mum's getting a funny new haircut, and it's not weird to him. And, you know, the slightly older niece and nephews understood it a little bit more, you know, compared to Fergus. But I think, that whole thing was just such a journey. And at the start I thought, I don't care, it's not going to bother me. But actually, when you're in the thick of it, I think looking at yourself in the mirror with no makeup and no hair and your eyelashes and eyebrows like hanging on by a thread and your puffy chemo face, one, you feel like you look like a cancer patient, which I just didn't want. I wanted to be just normal Tamara, normal mum, and it just be this thing on the side. So I didn't want to look sick. But also, it just made me realise how much we hold on to our physical identity to not hide behind, but it's such a key piece to who we feel we are and how we show up to the world. And when you're completely stripped back, it was an incredibly difficult lesson to learn, but so powerful. And it made me really reflect on who I am as a person and how people see me. And actually really, you know, I want people to see who I am when I'm stripped back and, you know, without the physical appearance and what I physically bring to the world, if that makes sense. Like who I am as a person.
Yes. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Is so important. And an incredibly difficult way to learn that. You know, and I guess to learn, you know, it's so challenging in a relationship to have your femininity stripped back and to feel like, you know, you don't feel attractive and you don't feel sexy. And when you feel like crap, and even in the aftermath of having a baby, right? Like that's...
Yeah, add that layer.
You know, you have that anyway, but then to suddenly be bald and puffy and, it's devastating to me because in the breast cancer community, fortunate to have formed so many beautiful connections and support networks. And there are so many women whose relationships break down. And a huge key piece of that is their partner's reaction to how they then look. And it's devastating. You know, this is something that's beyond your control, right? You have no control over this way that you look. And you're literally fighting for your life. And yeah, it's devastating to think there are so many women around the country who end up doing it on their own because it's too difficult for their partner and they've walked out on them.
Wow.
You know, and we definitely had some hurdles in our own relationship. And I think part of that, like when I really reflect on it, was my insecurities trying to like badger him down. And almost like wanting him to admit to me that he wasn't attracted to me in that moment.
Which, when you break that down, you know, I haven't lived that experience, but to me, that is a reflection of where you're not loving yourself.
And I was just going to say that, exactly that. It's like, one, our relationship is stronger than ever. And, you know, this whole journey has, you know, I'm really proud of where we're at because he's a beautiful man and I'm so lucky. And, yeah, we have risen to the challenge and it's definitely strengthened our bond beyond measure. But the key thing really is the lessons it's taught me about myself. And that's exactly it, is not valuing myself enough and seeking that external validation. And that has been a huge piece of my self-love journey in the aftermath, is loving myself and prioritizing myself and not seeking validation from Ryan or other people in my life. Is that knowing, you know, I provide value and, you know, no matter what I look like, I'm beautiful. And that a huge key piece of self-love for me is taking the time to prioritize myself and my well-being and the things that fill my cup and the things that help me show up as a better friend, a better partner, a better mother, and a better person for myself. And I think that's such an easy thing to slip away in the throes of motherhood. But it was such a big lesson for me that without our health, we literally could die tomorrow. And if we're not prioritizing our health and our well-being, we can't be here for the people that we love. So, yeah, it's been, I guess, a huge, almost like a permission slip to grant myself that time. Because if I don't look after myself, then I won't be here for my family. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of catalysts for, you know, the deeper part of self-love, not the surface level, is usually a life event of some sort.
Yes.
And I love that that was one of the things that you got from this. And to go back to the first part that you were talking about with, you know, losing your hair and things like that. And, you know, it's almost like the mask falling away. And I think that is a really big thing, that can you love yourself when all of that's gone? Like if you were to take away everything, like, first of all, who is that? Yeah. Who are you when you take everything away? Do you know? You know, do you know who you are when you take it all away? Because a lot of like the external things on the outside is how we think that we're going to find love or be chosen or be validated or be seen. But do you want to be seen and validated and loved for those external things? Or do you want to be...
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
And so I love that, you know, that you found that in this journey, and not seeking outside yourself. Like, that is transformational in itself. And exactly what you say, creating that time to take care of yourself is actually the best thing you can do for this world. Because... You know, and it's funny because Rachel, who I was talking to before, she said it beautifully. She said, you know, when you don't do that for yourself, whatever that is, that self-love thing is, then you're expecting someone else to do it. And you're actually burdening the people that you love by not doing it yourself. And I thought that was a very powerful way to put it.
I love that.
And that's why it's important for you to do it, because what you don't do and, what you don't show up for yourself for, whatever that is, whether it's your inner child healing, whether it's your abandonment wounds, whether it's anxiety, whether it's validation, no matter what it is, when you don't do that for yourself, you're making that a responsibility for someone else outside of you. And it's not their responsibility.
Yeah, exactly.
And so if you really love those people around,
shift.
If you really love those people around you, you will do those things for yourself. That is love.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's hard. It's a hard thing to learn, especially for, in my opinion, for most women, because we are taught to be nurturers and take care of everybody else, even if that means making us uncomfortable. And listening to you share your story and about how you want to protect everyone around you while you're crumbling inside, that's when I was getting emotional, because I know what that's like, that you want to be strong for everybody.
Yeah.
And I had to learn in my journey, same years, is how to be held and that it's okay to be vulnerable and it's okay to be held.
Yes.
And it's really hard for a lot of women to do that, to receive and feel safe in receiving.
Yes.
And so I feel like maybe that was another lesson for you, is to learn how to receive help, because you had to.
Definitely.
You were forced.
And I think prior I was so independent and would stubbornly just want to do things for myself. And it is a big piece of it, is just learning to accept help. And especially with something, a huge traumatic event or something like cancer, is that people on the outside just want to help, and you can't change it or take it away for that person, but what can you do to help make life easier for them? And it was a big thing to just let people help. And summer, and those were such beautiful lessons in amongst that, and even just lessons in how you can show up for somebody. Beautiful things, like I had a beautiful girlfriend who came around, Libby, and she had made me these beautiful healthy treats, but she'd put so much thought into them. They were healthy and full of all these goodies. And, we chatted and caught up, and she held the baby, and she folded my washing, and she vacuumed, even though I was like, this was like day 2 or 3 after chemo. So I was so lethargic and nauseous and felt like utter shit. I'm trying to clamber off the couch, and she's like, don't move. I'm vacuuming whether you like it or not. So it's happening.
I like this friend.
And I think it's just like surrendering and letting someone else take care of you.
Yeah. What a beautiful gift to give someone else.
Yes, yeah.
Because how good does it feel to give to others? And when we allow people to give to us, you're gifting them that feeling.
Exactly.
That's something that I've learned in surrendering to receiving. Because it feels good for people to give in whatever way that looks like for them.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, advice for anyone who's trying to help someone who's going through something is actually don't ask, just do.
Yeah.
Because a lot of that, if you haven't embodied that and you still feel uncomfortable receiving, if somebody says to you, what can I do to help? And I said this so often, no, I'm fine. We're okay. Thank you. Thanks for thinking of us. But if you just show up, I had my beautiful antenatal friends, and they created a meal train. And every Monday, someone would drop off a meal, a beautiful home-cooked meal. And that makes me emotional, because I would never have felt comfortable to ask for that.
Yeah.
But that made such a huge difference. You want to feel like you are feeding your family nutritious home-cooked meals. And when you're in the thick of treatment,
you literally can't.
And have no energy, the thought of using your energy for something like that, you don't have the capacity for it. And so somebody showing up with that is like the biggest gift you can give somebody. And so I think it was a huge learning for me, because that stuff made me feel so uncomfortable in the beginning. But as, the year grew on, it got easier.
Do you feel like you receive better now?
Yes. Okay. I think it's still a lesson.
I know. There's lots of layers there.
Yep. It's an ever-evolving, it's an ever-evolving journey. And I feel like, this last few years, you sort of get through the whole, cancer and treatment, and suddenly get to a point where they say, you're in remission, and you kind of get thrown out the other end, and you're just bewildered. Like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah.
Who am I? What am I supposed to do now? What is life?
Yeah.
Right. And so the last few years have just been this slow evolutional journey of figuring out who I am now. What does life mean to me? What is my purpose? But also it's like those key lessons of mindset shifts and healing, you know, my inner child and healing the different layers of myself and trying to look within, with things like that, you know, like not seeking the external validation, or where am I expecting or burdening somebody else with something when it's actually just that I'm not giving it to myself. That's been a huge constant work on for me.
Yeah, same.
Pausing in
all
the
of
moment
us
and thinking, hang on, why have I just reacted so strongly there? This is a me thing, not a them thing. You know, and yeah, I've been working with the beautiful Sophia Harris as a business mentor, and yeah, there's just the beautiful lessons she kind of pushes into us around that exact thing, is actually pausing in the moment and thinking, what am I making this mean about myself? Or what am I not giving myself in this moment? So that's a constant work on daily.
Yeah.
Forever.
And there gets to be an and that sometimes it is okay to ask for help to work through something.
Yes.
Like,
yeah, exactly.
I'm learning in my own relationship that I'm in now. This is the healthiest relationship I've ever been in, but it's also the hardest one because I've never really been in a healthy relationship. And learning that I don't have to go through all this alone. You know, like, we're meant to be in connection. We're meant to be in not just partnerships, but like friendship relationships too. And, you know, to ask for help. And it's okay to ask my friends to hold space for me, or ask my partner or whatever, like, hey, this came up for me and I'm having a hard time like processing it. I know that it's my work to do, but I need you to like hold me or help me, or can you just like let me verbal vomit, you know?
Yes, exactly.
And usually in that process of someone just holding space for me and just verbal vomiting whatever it is that I need to say, I find the answer within that, or the answer comes forward.
Yes.
Or it just it's like an energetic release of using my voice to get it out of me energetically. Because a lot of things that we hold inside our bodies is some sort of like, you know, obviously like trauma and energetic thing that just needs to like physically come out. Like, we can logically understand things, but if it's still in the body and it's not coming out, you've got to find a way for it to come out. And sometimes it is as simple as having a conversation.
Yeah. Getting it out.
Just getting it out verbally.
Definitely.
And there's so much power in, like, yes, it's our responsibility to, you know, meet our needs and fill our own cups and, you know, all of those things. But also there is a power in being vulnerable and saying, and surrendering in a way and saying, you know what, I need help.
Exactly.
I need you to hold space for me.
Exactly.
Like, please.
And I think even just like that huge communication piece within a relationship, right? That's been a really big thing. You know, I feel like Ryan and I have always been really open with one another and have had really great communication, but I think it's really intensified in the last 5 years. And, you know, a big part of that, I think, is huge learning around my cancer. And, you know, I don't ever like to place blame on it. And, you know, some people really strongly feel that maybe their binge drinking was the cause of their cancer, or, you know, this, that, or the next thing, whatever it may be. And I've really tried to steer clear of putting blame on any one thing, because from a mindset point of view and that negative frame of mind, I try and steer clear of that. I think the power of our mind and our thoughts is just mind-blowing, but a really big you know, spiritual meaning to breast cancer, especially in the left breast, can be holding on to resentment. And so that has been a huge thing for me, is where in my life do I need to release any resentment that I feel like I might be holding?
I am so glad you're talking about this, because I wanted to ask you that. That was going to be one of my questions is, have you found some sort of like spiritual meaning or tie to this experience?
Yes.
Because I've looked into it before. Because I went through a breast cancer scare in 2020. Yeah.
Mind-blowing. Well, we're both pregnant.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't pregnant.
Was it after?
It was after. My daughter was 6 months old.
Yeah.
And I had looked into that and I was like, this is fascinating. It was true.
Yeah.
It was true.
Yeah, so interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. So you've been working on letting go of resentment?
So, the last few years, it's been a huge part of, figuring out where in my life I need to, work on relationships and release things. And, but with Ryan, and it's not like I ever held resentment towards him. But, in relationships, you sometimes do, right? Like something pisses you off and you don't say anything. And then I kept thinking, well, there's no point in that just actually festering on the inside. Get it out. And so often I'll say to him, look, I don't want you to take this the wrong way. And I'm not trying to offend you. But this triggered me in this way, or, this actually made me feel like this. And I'm working on it because it is a me thing, but I need you to understand how that made me feel, or I need you to understand where my reaction came from. And, I'll say to him all the time, like this, I just have to get it out. Like, this is me just verbalizing to you. I need you to understand where I'm coming from. I need you to understand, like, sorry, I really overreacted there and I understand that, but I need you to understand why I reacted that way.
Yeah.
Because I've thought about it and I can understand where that came from. And yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not asking, and here's the thing too, like for anybody else in a partnership or any sort of relationship dynamic, you can say, I'm not asking you to fix the problem.
Exactly.
I'm asking you to get curious with me. Let's get curious together.
Yeah, definitely.
And, figure out like why it is that I reacted that way, or why it is that I did that, or why is it that I'm feeling this way. I don't want you to fix me and I'm not blaming you. Yeah. But this is how I'm feeling, and I want to get curious together to get to a solution. So because
I value you and I value our relationship, and I want to make this work.
Yeah. And again, that can be any relationship dynamic, not just a partnership,
yes, exactly.
I love that. That's a really good golden nugget. Yeah. So back to your story, not that we haven't stopped talking about your story, but what do you feel is the most important thing for people to know, in regards to your journey and how you came about to this amazing little company? Like what inspired, obviously, everything that happened to you, but what made you go, actually, I want to make this into a physical thing? And where is that headed now for you? Have you found this new identity, or is it still being uncovered? What is the new purpose? And we can have several purposes, but...
Yeah. I think, in the thick of that whole cancer tornado and treatment, I had so many conversations with my friends and family around checking and self-checking, and that I was lucky to catch it when I did, because I knew my normal and I checked all the time. And so many of them said, oh my goodness, I've never checked my breasts. Because
here's the thing too about your story that blows me away. If you hadn't have pushed and you listened to her advice of wait a few months after the baby was born, you might be sitting here with a completely different story.
I might not be sitting here at all. And that's what devastates me. And yeah, I'm going to get emotional again, but I have seen women within the breast cancer community who are the same as me, same phase of life. I was 34 when I was diagnosed, and I've seen women even younger in their 20s who have passed away. Women in their 30s and their early 40s who have young children just the same as I do, who haven't made it. And a really big part of that is, one, they found it themselves when it was already advanced, or they were dismissed. And it was a few months before they then went and got it checked again. And I just know the difference that 6 months can make. And that devastates me. And I feel like so incredibly grateful and fortunate. There's so much...
There's a reason you're here.
There's so much that, there's so many emotions that go through you when someone else passes away or someone else is diagnosed with an incurable disease. Yeah. And you think, why me?
Yeah.
So much guilt around the fact that I'm still sitting here and I'm in remission and I'm healthy and thriving and I have 3 beautiful boys. And I guess it's like this, it feels like a deep sense of responsibility to then share my message and my knowledge. And I want to shake people and say, don't take your life for granted and don't take your health for granted. And, knowing you're normal and looking after yourself and checking yourself regularly, it's such a small thing that you can do and add into your day. Mm-hmm. And when you think from a self-love perspective, right, all of the things that we do in our day to look after ourselves and love ourselves, like standing in front of the mirror for how long in the morning, putting makeup on and washing our hair and doing our hair and choosing our outfits and, making a beautiful, nourishing breakfast, or all the things, going to an hour yoga class, or all of those things that we do to look after ourselves, to fill our cup, to light us up. Checking your breasts takes a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
It's such a minute amount of your week. It doesn't have to take long, but it could be the difference between you being here and not being here. And I just feel, a real responsibility to kind of get the messaging out there and help educate women because, through no fault of their own, there are so many women who are battling advanced disease, and it's purely because they didn't know what I know.
Yeah.
And I think when, you turn 45 and you join the screening program, and here in New Zealand that's every 2 years, so every 2 years you have a mammogram and you can pay privately to get one in between times. But until you turn 45, the onus is on you, right? Mm-hmm. But do we have that knowledge and that awareness? And I don't think women are educated strongly enough in understanding how important it is, and that actually it's on you.
I definitely
your
didn't know until meeting you.
Exactly, it's your responsibility to be checking, because I could, so now I teach workshops, right? So I run these workshops, teaching around, my story and how I came about to do this, and sort of covering normal breast anatomy and common abnormalities. Not everything is worst case scenario, and it's not to scaremonger. Sometimes changes happen within our breasts that don't necessarily mean it's going to be cancerous and it's going to be this horrible journey ahead of you. But some of them, you still need to monitor and keep an eye on.
I loved the way that you painted it when you came into the Self-Love Society and spoke about have it be a self-love ritual of like just connecting with your body.
Yeah.
Just taking that time to connect with yourself and touch yourself. And
exactly.
Like that's such a beautiful gift to give yourself, to just like check in and tune in. And it's not really necessarily just about checking your breasts, but like checking in with you.
Yes. Yeah.
And giving and showing yourself love.
And pausing long enough to get to know yourself.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, definitely.
And so this is how this came about?
Yeah. So I sort of started wanting to kind of spread the message and really kind of drive into people the importance of knowing they're normal and checking themselves regularly. And right in the thick of it, I said to Ryan, like, this is great. I'm telling people all the time to check themselves regularly. And I would have friends that would say, every time I see you, it's my reminder. I go off and I do my check, and that's
not enough.
Not enough. Like, that's a lot of pressure, because if I'm not seeing you regularly, you're not checking regularly. And we thought, how can we actually force people to check regularly and create a habit? And so, it goes back to that whole like habit stacking. What are you already doing? What can you attach it to? And, the place that I always do my self-checks is in the shower. And so we thought, what about a beautiful body wash that would sit in your shower and it's in your line of sight and it reminds you to do your check? And so, we came up with our beautiful body wash. So it's all natural formulation. It's got 100% verified natural fragrance, something that we sort of dreamed up in the thick of treatment. And we actually started making little batches of body wash at home and trying to perfect it, and it was incredibly difficult. And then the post-treatment fatigue really hit, and just getting through the day and looking after the kids was all I could manage. So we parked it for a long time, and then, there are a few things that happened to some sort of health-related scares with some beautiful women around us that really made us have that reminder that life's short, anything can happen, and would we regret not doing this? What if we could create this beautiful product that would have impact and help to change lives and save lives. And so we kicked it up again and and worked really hard to create this beautiful product that we're so proud of. So our brand name, Check Your Bits, we wanted it to be a little bit cheeky, tongue-in-cheek. We wanted it to stand out to people and to make people think. And, we want to appeal to the younger crowd, right? Because it's so important to start checking from an early age and getting to know your normal from an early age. But we hope that this product can, sit in your shower in your line of sight and remind you to check your bits. Take that moment in the shower when you're by yourself. Hopefully you don't have children hanging off you, or often, someone will be pestering me, Mum, asking you some important question when you're in the middle of your shower. But, generally it's that quiet moment to yourself, and it is a moment to pause, reflect, think on your day, check in with yourself and your whole body, and get to know your normal all over, right?
And so for me too, like in that moment, you can like take time to like thank your body, thank you for running. Thank you for keeping me alive. Like, it's just such a beautiful time to just check in with yourself.
Yeah.
So how can people order it?
So we have a few beautiful stockists around New Zealand. If you're in Christchurch, Addie and Lou, beautiful store. Amy is one of our good friends, and she was our very first stockist. So if you haven't been to Addie and Lou, you are missing out. You need to get yourself there. And then we've got another couple of beautiful wee stockists around Christchurch that have it in their home studios, and we've got those on the website actually listed, the stockists, and then through our website. So www.checkyourbits.co.nz. Or you can shoot us a message on Instagram.
Amazing. Yeah. I have one last question for you. What is the meaning of life to you?
It's a big one. And I definitely think I have pondered this a lot, and it has changed and evolved for me over the last few years. And I constantly think of it, right? And I constantly think, I think that we're all here for big lessons, and whether that be learning a huge lesson around ourselves, but also to teach other people. I think that a really big thing for me that I often think of with my boys is, what will they remember of me? And I think it's just remembering each day to try and show up as the best version of myself and model to the boys my morals and values. And one day when I'm not around anymore, what are they going to remember of me? What are going to be the key things that I've taught them? And what legacy will I leave behind? But I think ultimately there are so many people in this world, and so many people that you don't know from a bar of soap, right? Who is going to remember you at the end of the day? And I think that's a really big thing that I've thought a lot on in sort of probably the last 6 months is, to do my purpose work and do the stuff that like lights me up, right? But don't do it for somebody else to remember it, is to do it so that at the end of my life, I get to feel fulfilled and I get to have no regrets. And I get to know that I absolutely lived my life with good intentions to spread love and to ultimately look after myself and live for myself, because this is my life and my journey, and I can't put any pressure on anybody else to have influence over that. Yeah.
That's a really beautiful answer. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
This was amazing. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored.
Yes. And I feel like there was so much more we could go into and talk about, but how can people find you? Do you have 2 Instagrams?
Yeah, so kind of have tried to keep it separate. So 2 Instagrams, check_your_bits, and that's sort of like an educational type page. So try and pop little self-check reminders on there, kind of little bits of facts and knowledge around breast health and health empowerment, and those reminders to check yourself, and also advertise workshops through there. So you can reach me via there or via the website. But I have been doing a number of corporate workshops. So if you work in an environment where you feel like this would be well received, I think everybody needs to hear this message. So if you would love to help facilitate me coming along and speaking to your workplace, then definitely reach out via either Instagram or the website. And then we have the body care page. So check your bits _body care, and that is for our body wash. And we have another couple of beautiful products in the pipeline, which is really exciting.
Oh,
so
that is exciting. I can't wait to see. Oh, you have to tell me when we stop recording. Thank you so much. Like, you are just such an amazing person. Like, I just love how big your heart is. And like I told you before, I have so much, like, I feel so grateful to know you, because
thank you.
Your purpose is so just incredible. Like, you're spending your precious life, which is a precious life, to help others, like, in such a big way. And I just think that says so much about you.
Thank you.
And I love how you've alchemized your story into your mission and your purpose. And it's going to continue evolving into all these other things. And it's just going to be so cool to watch. And I feel really privileged to know you.
Thank you.
So thank you
so
for
much.
being on. And thanks for tuning in. And if you liked this episode or found anything impactful, or, all the things that you're supposed to say, please share. And if you have any questions about anything, you can message either of us on either of our Instagrams. And that's it.